I love it.
Is everybody, did I get everybody? Last summer when we were talking about different topics for brown bag lunches and social media came up, and how it sometimes comes into mediation in different ways, and how it would be really good if we would find out more about it. I thought, well, I know some people who know some things about social media, and it would be really, really fun to have them here. And so I thought to myself, let's ask all three Rush kids to come. So this morning I looked up what their jobs are so that I could formally introduce you to them with their correct jobs. And Mark is a senior reporter and producer at Michigan Radio. And the thing that I would have said is that he has been developing the online news for the last 4 years, because that's one of the things I know, one of the first stations in the country to start doing that. Lisa's the executive director of the Stewardship Network, and I actually wrote down what it does that you put on your website, which I really like. A national award-winning conservation group connecting, equipping, mobilizing people and organizations to care for land and water. And she started in southeastern Michigan, and now it's spread throughout Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, New England. Have I missed some?
Yeah, as I say, I'm at the edge of my intellectual and strategic capacity.
Because her staff is like 2. So it's incredible. And as I was thinking about this brown bag and realizing that we were going to have, do you call it, these are PowerPoints?
Oh yeah, these are just things we can talk about.
Okay, but I mean the thing, the category is called a PowerPoint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
close enough.
So I thought there might be another more advanced thing you were doing that wasn't just PowerPoint. So I realized we were going to have PowerPoints, and I thought to myself, we need to make sure Janelle is here so that we can make sure the equipment's working. And I thought, what did I mean, Janelle? When she gets in trouble, who does she call? Our son Andy, because he's the IT manager for the county. So you are in for a treat.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah. I would go say my understanding of social media is about an 8, and it's a big part of my job. And the reason I say 8 is because there's always so much more to learn. It's always changing, and there's always a new platform out there. So I'm a reporter, producer, and one of my main jobs is an online reporter, producer. You can't hear me? Speak a little loud. One of my main jobs is an online reporter, producer, and so what I had to do was take over social media for the station as well. And my boss one time came to all of the reporters in the station and said, if there's one hire you could make at this station, what would it be individually, separately, each one of us? And to a person, we all said a social media producer, because the job is just that big. And so we hired a social media producer now, and so that's now off my plate, thankfully. So I'm also still there.
And I'd say I'm somewhere between like a 3 and a 6. And so we use social media a lot in the Stewardship Network. So I'm a director of a nonprofit, and it's one of the ways that we communicate with people. And one of the things that we have found, so we do all kinds of events that bring volunteers in, and one of the main ways that we communicate with people is by tweeting. And people come to events because we tweet about them, which just blows me away. I'm still like, are you serious? Like, that's how people are finding out about it. Or we're holding a conference in a couple weeks that brings together 300 to 500 people from across the Great Lakes and beyond, and we'll tweet. Everybody will tweet. We'll have a hashtag there, and people will tweet about the conference there. So we use that kind of thing.
Man, tweet.
Exactly. We'll get there. So that's, and one of the things that people will say. So you're on social media. You have a Facebook page, and I'm like, I really don't use it, even though I know it's an important tool for us to use. So we use it as an organization, but I personally don't do it.
So I would give myself probably between a 5 and 7. I wouldn't want to be an 8 like my esteemed brother, because it's his job. I work for the county, and we're a little more stodgy, and so we've we're just set up to be a little more conservative in how we communicate. But I was talking to somebody this morning about an update to our website, because we haven't updated the platform of our website. We're updating content on our website all the time. But we were talking about updating our website, and we were saying, why do we want to update our website? And that's because it's the main portal for government communications. But we also started talking about it and said, well, 7-8 years ago, you would have a website, and people would come. You would expect people to come to your website or not, but that's how you would communicate with people, and that's how people would expect to Google something and find it. And now, as Lisa's saying, people are getting their information in many different ways, and hardly any of them are the official channels. They don't come and say, "Oh, let me go to ewashington.org and see what the news is from the county." No, that's not it at all. And so, as we think about updating our website, we're thinking about actually figuring out how to update our communications for the current, I can't even say century, because it's like the current 3-year stint that we're in, because it really, it changes so fast. So, but then personally, I use some of the social media quite a bit for a lot of different things, but a lot of it is about getting news and keeping in touch with friends.
We have an uncle who lives in Indiana, who is Mom's younger brother, and he is on Facebook, and he'll often know things about Andy or I, because Lisa's not on it much, before Mom and Dad do. He will call them and tell them what we're doing.
Well, I love the time when Ben said something about Will's awake, and I'm like, how do you know Will's awake? Because he's on Facebook.
They don't live anywhere near each other.
We haven't seen him yet, but
So,
Press
next slide.
another button.
There it is.
Light the way.
So yeah, we wanted to know, are you on social media? So, just a show of hands, how many people are on Facebook? All right. How many on Twitter? Tumblr?
Fell off the cliff.
Reddit? Instagram? Off the
I got it again.
Instagram, yeah. Exactly.
Chase you down, follow me.
Exactly. See what they're eating for dinner.
Exactly.
Just do it.
Snapchat.
I'm not on Snapchat. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's like this year.
Yeah. So maybe you can skip ahead to like
Yeah,
this.
well, I guess the other is what do you guys want to learn about? Why did you come?
Yeah.
So just kind of throw out some things of things that want to make sure that you walk away with. Any expectations? Any thoughts about what you want to learn? Yeah.
Well, it's comforting to know how ignorant you are, too. I mean, I really want to know what's out there that I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear Diane Rehm say, send us a tweet. I said, what the heck is that? I mean, do I have to have an account to tweet her? How is it like Facebook? I know Facebook, I have to have an account. I'm not on it.
So how does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I think also to me what's helpful is to maybe for people who don't know the different platforms, like what is like their best use or most common use. I think that's kind of
Sure.
Yep.
Good for understanding at least.
Start with the donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total example.
And then yes.
I'd like to know how to use Facebook without abandoning all my privacy.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good one.
I'd like to know what am I missing in the world, and I keep staying in this little hole that I.
Want me to tell you right now? You're missing. Tell you 10 things you're missing.
Okay, the difference between Tumblr and Instagram, I'm considering one or the other, so.
Okay. Yeah.
What's on the horizon that we absolutely don't know and hasn't been mentioned yet?
And I'm curious about, and it's not because the DRC is committing to doing anything, but I'm curious about how do you deal with the concept of confidentiality in the midst of all of everybody gets your information kind of thing. There are practitioners in the field who are using social media tools in their business. The DRC is not, but I'm just curious about that. In Michigan, there's such a strong position about confidentiality. I don't see how the two can marry.
Right.
So if
right.
you can.
Right. Yeah.
I noticed you didn't mention the one that I am on, LinkedIn. Is
Yes,
that
that's
sort of
another
like
one, yeah.
falling away, and there's all the, I did not even hear of the ones that you just mentioned, like the Tumblr and I don't even know what those are.
Right. Right.
But is LinkedIn still?
Yeah, it counts.
Okay.
Yeah, it counts.
It's still there.
Yeah.
I just got 10 new friends on LinkedIn. Connections, I think is all my friends.
Actually, actually also, some of the differences between some, because I'm on, because, like I said, I'm on all of them, but it's only because the kids, so I keep track of what they're saying. I mean, because another one that's mentioned is Kick. That's the kids who use it. That's everybody. That's for under 21 folks who use Kick.
Right now.
Yeah, the middle, well, that's the middle schoolers and high schoolers who use the Kick because there's too many of their parents and grandparents on Facebook and now on Twitter. And now on Twitter, so they moved to this thing called Kick. There's another thing called Kick, and so I found that, and I only found that out because my oldest daughter in college was gleefully telling on my 12-year-old that she's on Kick. I guess it's kind of like revenge for her telling her so much. So that's the only reason I found out about it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we've got a couple of things in here where we got to go down them, and if something's not on the list that you want to know about,
Yeah.
let's get into it because you might be able to teach us something too. So.
Yeah.
I mean, social media, it's like, that's why we hired a full-time person to do it, because there's so much to cover. And now that we've covered everything you guys want to know about, we can certainly try to plow through and hit the things that are most important to you and try to answer some questions that you guys.
Mark, was
And
your-
one other thought, in terms of what you wanted?
Oh, mine is similar to Belinda's, but maybe a little bit broader, the whole question of professional ethics in use of social media. And, I have a friend who somewhat frequently kind of badmouths this abstract client that she doesn't need, but it sets a very bad tone.
Right.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. So let's run in.
Oh, yeah.
You get that. So we wanna
Okay, yeah,
get
so,
first shot.
I mean, this is just basically things that you know, that what we're talking about is basically a technology that creates a space for people to gather, essentially. And like you said, each platform is a different party. There's a different party going on. There's a different conversation going on. There's even different languages being used in these different places. And so that's one of the things that you learn about social media is what tool works best for what platform. So is Facebook the best place to have a conversation for a mediated group, or would you rather create a Reddit group? There's just so many different platforms out there, and this is definitely a space where the languages are very different, and learning languages is part of the process.
Well, one of the so Mark and I were working on this last night using some online social media through Google Docs and sharing, and we were able to meet, share, look at this together, and talk about it. And I was looking at this little picture, and you guys can't see any of it because you're a little further back. But it's all these little dots of people and lines kind of between them, sort of one-to-one. It's like this person to this person, this person to this person. But social media isn't really like that. It's more like Mark and I can share a conversation, and if you all are my friends or his friends, you can sort of watch that conversation, and you can lurk. You can just sit there lurking and watching what's going on, or you can click a button, depending upon which platform it is, a like, a retweet, a thumbs up, or whatever it is, or make a comment on that. But it lets me share with Mark a picture of his daughter who's over at my house this afternoon playing, and I post this picture, not necessarily for Mark, but it's there's sort of this public nature of it. It's private, but it's also got this kind of whole public nature to it, and you have to really think about it pretty much as a public conversation. I mean, that's the way I like to look at it. We talk about it with email in the county is, you send an email, that's fine. Do not assume any confidentiality in it. Right. Not because it's going to get out, but because it just could. And somebody could forward it, there's no context around it. So think about it as a very public conversation. And that's why a lot of people kind of clam up, because they're not quite ready for it.
Right, or they don't in the case of your friend, where they're posting something that could get out to that person that they're talking about.
And they might not think about it. They're just saying, oh yeah, this is my platform to vent how my day went. Oh,
not realizing it's not private. Yeah,
and it's not private.
I have that same. I don't know if it's the same person, but I have that same problem. There is a person that I once taught, and ethically what she's doing is not appropriate, and so I even had a dilemma of whether I should report her or contact her. I mean, I don't know what to do, because she divulges enough information about her clients that it's inappropriate and probably unethical.
Well, and I think that's where if you don't get in there and be a part of the conversation in social media, it's going to go on without you. And so it is important to engage. At Michigan Radio, you hear about the trolls on MLive and all that. So we engage them, and we talk to them because we want them to behave better, to realize that you are in a public space here, and you need to treat people in this space the same way you would treat them as if you were to meet them on the street. And so I think there's nothing wrong with online checking those people and saying, hey, yeah. Oh, sorry. A troll, yes, I'm using a technical term. On news pages especially, there are a lot of people who come in just to kind of start fights with other people in the section. And so they'll just say something outrageous. And suddenly they're getting a lot of attention, which is what they're after. And so we reserve the right to delete those comments, tell them why they're deleting them. If it's not against our social media guidelines, we'll allow it, but then talk to them about, hey, you need to behave better here. Talk to us like you would talk to your neighbor.
When you say retweet and like and with those other, does that mean as soon as you hit that button? Because I always wonder what that meant to like us on Facebook. So if you hit that button, does that automatically then go to anyone that you're friends with? Is that what that means? Like it sends the word.
Yeah, let's
go through some of that. Yeah.
So this is just an example of Mom, I was talking with Mom about. You mentioned the internet and social media. People have likened it to the Industrial Revolution, but Mom was mentioning it's really like the invention of fire.
It's that radical.
This is the Arab Spring. It came about because of social media. So there's other pictures of that. Right? I mean, they're sharing Facebook pages about how they get together. And this is something that we use on Facebook. It's a great tool, and we've done a lot of great reporting with it. And there's just so many different applications for it. Mediators, environmental groups, where you can connect with like groups around the country and have discussions about what you're running into, confidentiality problems, how you manage different situations, and instantly you're all connected, and you're all and it's a private group. It can be a public group where anybody can come and ask to join. It can be a closed group where somebody's saying, "Sorry, this is just for mediators only. You can't join," or it can be a secret group and it's not publicly listed. So we have conversations with other newsrooms around the country in the Local Stories Project about what they're covering in St. Louis, what they're covering in Boston, and a lot of great reporting comes out of it. And that tool is, I think, really useful for a lot of people.
And so what you're talking about is a Facebook group.
It's called a Facebook group, so there's not just private pages.
So what you're getting, if you think of Facebook as sort of at its base is this thing where you can go and say, what's on your mind today, and you type some words and hit post, and it goes out. And then sort of who that goes out to, that's sort of the question of how far does it go? And for the most part, that's under your control to some degree. There's privacy settings that say who can post on my wall. A wall is sort of like your news feed. Who can post there? There are controls as to whose stuff you see. So if all of you are my friends, I could say I only want to see your stuff on my wall come dropping up, and then if I want to look you up, I could find out what you're saying. But there's a bunch of privacy settings, and I think that's part of the dilemma. And it is most people just sort of log in and start using it, and they're really not aware of how far and wide is it going, and if I publish this, is it going to be? And if you can lock down an account where basically only you and your friends can see it.
And initially, it's public.
To your friends, they can resend it. You can't prevent them from resending it.
Yes.
Correct.
I think, yeah. I don't know that you can, but
it depends what you're saying.
If I share something with you and you share it,
you can't prevent me from sharing.
Right, and that's sort of like the email. That's like the email thing. Is I send you an email and you can say, "Boy, look what Andy says," and then all of a sudden it's out there. So
Facebook has gotten a lot better at you being able to control that. So initially, when you sign up for Facebook, they make it public. They want everything to be public. So there's a little button at the top right corner. It has a lock on it, and you click on it, it drops down, and this little widget comes up, and it walks you through your privacy settings. And it's actually much improved. So you can really control who sees what in that way.
Just what he was saying. So if I put something out on my Facebook and other people can see it, can those other people then republish that to somebody else?
They could, yeah.
And there's no way to stop that.
I don't know the answer to that. There might be a way to stop that. But if you don't want them to share it, it would be a direct message to the person you want to go to. And that is like email. They could copy that and paste that and share it. But yes, your posts on your wall can get shared to other people.
Actually, so just this is a nice little thing. So I just logged into Facebook, and so probably for more than a year, I've been using my phone almost exclusively as how I interact with Facebook. And so I was lucky to remember my password. And so the first thing is my browser is asking me if it wants to remember that, which I always say no, just because I don't want that one out there. That's the browser talking. And now it's saying, "Hi Andy, we have a new tool that helps you quickly review a few of our privacy settings to make sure that they're set up the way you want."
The happy dinosaur?
Is that a happy dinosaur? Yeah, that's
So
like
friendly.
Barney, only blue. And it should take only a minute or 2 to use. We'll check it out. So I'll just click Let's Do It to see. I didn't set this up, but it might be nice to just walk through. One, I know that you can't all see this, so your posts, this controls who can see what you share when you post from the top of newsfeed in your profile. Your current setting is friends. So my posts are available to people who I've accepted a friend request from.
And then Andy, show what are your other options other than friends.
Public and more. Only me. Friends except acquaintances, and then you can actually have like I've got close friends. You can actually categorize your friends. I don't know if my friends know how I categorize them. I've got close friends, U.S. Peace Corps, Washington County, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and family and acquaintances. So there's all kinds of different things like that. So that's the who sees my post thing. Okay, so.
And I think there is something where it won't share a post if they're not in your group.
Yeah.
Somebody might not have an option to share it.
I didn't hear what you said.
I think there is an option that you can set so that when you post something on your wall, it doesn't have a link that says share, so that it gets reshared to the whole world. Yeah. But the other option with that is to start a group, and within that group, it won't get shared outside that group.
And by all means, if anybody here is using stuff and you know the answer to these, jump in, right? Exactly. So.
And then this one is about my app. So within Facebook, there's a bunch of different plug-in type things that you can use. It's kind of funny to go into this because I look at this Power Bar Stronger Together. I'm like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that is, but it's something I must have been interested in at some point. Pinterest, Droid is my phone, Toyota cars, pick hoops I do for March Madness, so things like that. So that's.
So it's a lot better than it used to be.
Right, and it's actually nice that they come right out there and let you know. Otherwise, you have to go up in here and click on something to manage something. So, so just for those of you who aren't on Facebook, maybe this is just kind of a quick little. So, this is what I was telling you. Like at its base rate, Facebook is what's on your mind, and I, can type something in here and say, I'm talking about social media to the DRC group, and then I can hit that, and then people would be able to like that. So this is something from Charity Nevy, who used to work for Michigan Radio, now is in Iowa. Pretty snow in a pretty town, and so I can like that. Yeah, I like that. And I can comment on it if I want, so you can just sort of see down through here. Is that really cool sailboat? Anyway, so basically, the general idea is you can either freeform type something, or in the case of like this thing, you can just share something. So something's on another media site, and I can say I want to share this on Facebook, and then your little Facebook app comes up, and you write something about it, and it's on your newsfeed. Yep. And other people
What does like mean like, or does it mean something else?
It's like if somebody says something, you say thumbs up. It's just a general kind of support.
An acknowledgement.
An acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Support. Cool. Nice.
I like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nod.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody's talking, that's what it is.
Right. Yeah, it's a nod, and then like commenting is even more than that.
More engagement.
Yeah. So. All right.
So you can go if you want to go to
back to here.
Yeah.
We'll go back to full screen. Full
Sure.
screen. Present.
So
that.
Yep. And what we do, and then ProPublica uses it to. They started a group of doctors because they were doing stories on how people are harmed in hospitals. Sepsis is a big problem in hospitals. And so for their reporting, they started a Facebook group that was closed and private, and they were running their ideas by these doctors who joined the group. And now they're asking other professionals to join in and discuss how patients may be harmed in hospitals. And they have a real robust community on Facebook discussing this all the time. It took on a life of its own. The reporters are out of it now, and they're their own Facebook group sharing ideas with each other. And then I think the next slide shows Facebook is it. I mean, you all
Among adults.
can you just yeah. So when we asked you who's on what social media channel, it reflected basically this shows the number of people, U.S. adults and what social media sites they use, and Facebook is by far used. And it's a very powerful tool. Below that is LinkedIn. Next is Pinterest.
So let's stop there.
So LinkedIn is a professional website. And you probably many of you come across it where it's like a resume sharing site, and it's becoming more of a social media tool. There are more and more conversations taking place on LinkedIn.
But it's primarily about work things. If I look at my list of people, the several hundred people or more that I know in LinkedIn, and several hundred people or more that I know in Facebook that I like, they're different groups. So the LinkedIn people are all my work contacts, people that we do business with or whatever. Facebook is more sort of friends, family,
from all walks of life.
From all walks of life.
Next is Pinterest. I don't know if you've heard of Pinterest, but it's a very visually based website where people share images. A lot of times people share recipes on that. So there's a beautiful shot of a dinner, and somebody wants to make that. They can click on it and they get a recipe. Or home building ideas. There are some media sites that have tried to use it. It's very visual. Twitter is basically, for us, it's where news breaks. So the AP Wire used to be the thing that we would go to find out what's happening right now. Twitter is the place where everything is breaking on news. So if you want to find out what's happening in your community, Twitter is...
So how do you do that?
It's very complicated. This is one of those ones where I talk about the language, and it's almost like when you go on Twitter, when you first get there, it looks like you're looking at Sanskrit.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
So do you want to go to your Twitter?
So do you have to have an account to go on it?
You do have to have an account to go on it, so you have an email address that you give them and a password. And then once you do that, you're on Twitter.
You want to log into yours?
Sure.
So everyone is a reporter on Twitter.
No.
Could be.
Yeah.
Celebrity reporters.
Right, and you might not be reporting news, you might just be jabbering.
Yeah.
We're talking about the conference.
Jabbering 149 characters.
So Twitter, so Facebook is free form, you can kind of post lots of different things. Twitter is, at least at its base, is 140 characters. A tweet is like a text message to the world.
But it's 140 characters per text message.
Per text message. So I think the text message was like 170 before it breaks into 2 messages like the phone. But it's 140 characters, and then it comes up as this little thing. So you want to.
It just goes to your friends, or goes.
It's generally more public.
It goes to anybody who's following you.
Anybody who's following you, yes.
So
here's the baseline. Like, so
Is it younger people on Twitter or?
I don't know that there's.
Here,
I would guess.
I'll Google the stats while you do that.
Yeah, you can do that.
You know, it's like right.
It would definitely depend on the professions. Like, definitely a lot of reporters are on Twitter. A lot of celebrities are on Twitter. A lot of younger set is on Twitter. It's where they get their news. So it's often where I get my news. So I'm essentially going to Twitter, and I have the people that I'm following are here. And they're often people who are in the public radio world.
How do you find the people to follow?
You search them, and there's and once you start following, say if you start following somebody who's very vocal about mediation and improving mediation, well, once you follow that one person, you look and see who their followers are, or who they're following, and then you realize, okay, well this person's following me, they might be interested in sharing some stuff. So it's, in a way, it's a lot like gardening. You just have to kind of come in and pick the followers that will help inform what you're interested in.
And do you ask them if they would like to I mean, do you have to take the permission to pop?
No. The reason they're on Twitter is because they want to share ideas.
So Mark, search Stewardship Network. Are you following Stewardship Network, do you think?
I don't know.
You're right, so search.
So if I want to know, I want to follow Lisa's group. There they are. Well, now I'm going to follow them. So I click that button right there to follow them, and now all of their
So it
posts.
shows up all these other ones that you might want to follow.
Yep.
And so we use it to push out things like, if you scroll down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a Senate Bill 78 that is has been approved by the House. I think it's going to Snyder's desk right now, and it's all about taking biodiversity off of the list of things that the Michigan Department of Natural Resources can manage for, which to us is crazy. And so we push out, sign to protect this biodiversity bill. So we'll push something like that out.
Yep. And one of the big things on Twitter is called a hashtag. You've probably heard of that. And that's what a conversation is built around. So Lisa's group is talking about this bill that now is sitting in front of Governor Snyder, whether he's going to sign it or not. Where are people on Twitter talking about it? Well, they're talking about it right here, this hashtag. So if we click on that, it shows all the tweets. It shows the top tweets right here of this discussion around this bill.
Around vetoing that bill, not there.
Right, yeah.
Support.
Right.
And so one of the things in Twitter that people have said to me personally is that I should really be tweeting. As the director of the Stewardship Network, doing what we do, I should really be out there with that kind of presence. I say I don't have time for that, but if I could figure out how to get into it, I think it would be really straightforward for me to do.
Yeah, and that's basically it. Is that until you see a reason to do it and there's some payback for you, it's really difficult to get into it first to kind of dabble in it. But when you start discovering things and finding a new person who's looking at an issue in a different way, it doesn't really become rewarding until you do that. So for our staff, it was really difficult to get the reporters to tweet. They didn't want to do it until they realized that they could develop sources and improve their stories through Twitter. Once they realize that, they're all about Twitter.
Because through your tweet, people can reply, people can retweet, so if I send it to my dad and my dad retweets it, so I send it out, people who are following me might see it, he retweets it, it sort of goes out to his network, and it can sort of grow that way, and then you can also reply within that, and then you can sort of like look at a conversation. You can actually develop a conversation around a tweet or something.
Right. And if Lisa were discussing this bill through her Twitter and having tweeting a lot about her feelings about this bill and why it should be vetoed, and here are all the reasons. There might be somebody in Arizona who is like, "Hey, the same thing happened in Arizona. Right. Lisa Brush, we should talk."
Yeah.
And suddenly you're connected.
Yep.
And you're that much more powerful.
But I see my 20-something children spend all day in meals on their little phones doing all this tweeting.
Yeah.
And so if you get involved, if you send one tweet out, how much time do you have in a day to start responding to everybody's tweet back to you?
That's what he says doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's addictive.
It's addictive, and if you don't do it unless there's some payback for it.
Yeah.
Right, like you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised when you were listening to different social medias and what percentage of adults follow the tweeters that far down.
Yeah.
Virtually all of the news channels that both radio and TV that I listen to are always talking about, here's my Twitter address, send me a comment.
Yeah.
So-and-so made this comment via Twitter. And it's like that throughout those newscasts, you keep hearing these Twitters going on.
Yeah.
I thought it was much more prevalent.
Yeah, and I think that's the bias of the news media, because they're getting a lot of information on Twitter, sharing a lot of information on Twitter. They're all on Twitter. And they're influenced by what they're hearing on Twitter. So,
and the prevalence of it, Spencer and I were talking in the office about, have you listened to a push pound for this option? Have you started to hear, they're starting to say hashtag?
Yeah.
It is that.
Oh.
So that's what that is.
And hashtag is a shortcut for a group.
Yeah.
No, a conversation.
Conversation.
It's like if you search for hashtag Go Blue, like people who post about Michigan athletics say, I've just committed to the University of Michigan, hashtag Go Blue. And so that if you search now for hashtag Go Blue up in search, you'll find what's the most recent stuff going on with with Michigan athletics.
Yeah.
And so it's just a connecting point. Like a thing like Go Blue is one that just goes kind of forever, and there's a lot of things going on and different people posting to it. You can also look at Michigan hockey, all different people. I think Michigan football, Jim Harbaugh just got a new Twitter account. But it really is, I think Mark, you're saying it's one of those broadcast things, and if you're using it as a broadcaster, as a talker, one of the things, I mean, you can just use it as you, but the people in the media are using it to sort of enhance their brand. I've got this many tweets, I got this many people following me, I got this, I've got influence. As I look at Mark's thing and he's got, 1,000 people following you?
No.
Oh, 317. All right, come on, people, we can do better than that. But there are people who get like 10,000 followers, and then they become sort of a valuable commodity within whatever it is that they tend to be tweeting about. So that's what for Lisa as the executive director of the Stewardship Network, part
in
of what
its
you're
nationally
doing
expanding role
is you could see some value in
Right.
doing that.
Right.
And that's sort of like for me as the IT director of Washington County, part of it is some of it is coming up with what's the point? Try to figure out, do I want to tweet about technology and local government and start building sort of my local brand and those kinds of things? Then people in the media at other places might come to me and say, oh yeah, here's the IT director of Washington County. He's talking about cybersecurity. Let me give him a call. And next thing you know, I'm on the newspaper. And so that's how you sort of get out there as somebody.
And just like Dad, this morning you shared Tom Friedman article, and you cut it out and gave it to me in a piece of paper. I use scissors.
keeping your dexterity.
I love it. It's so organic.
And then he could share it with me.
But what Twitter is often used for is what Lisa could do or what mediators could do. If you've read an article about mediation that's really interesting to you, you can tweet it out to others, and you can help promote the work
So
that's
you
being
tweet
done.
NY
Yes.
Times to Friedman, date, subject?
Actually, go to New York Times. Many websites have the share this.
So a couple other thoughts. One of the things, because of the reduced number of characters, there's you'll notice that oftentimes those websites are not listing stewardshipnetworkconference.org. So you do a shortened URL, and there's a URL shortener service. So you go to bit.ly.com and you enter in your long URL or website name, and it shortens it and spits out a shortened version to you.
Because you only have 140 characters.
This is just real quick. So this is New York Times. So scroll back up. Scroll. So up at the top, there is this thing that says 96 comments. So there is a conversation going on the New York Times website about this thing. Now you scroll up over here. Many websites, not the county, but we want to have this built-in stuff where I can email that. I can hit email. It goes out the old-fashioned 2 steps up from cutting it out, sharing it on the Facebook, Twitter, and I'm not sure what Save does, and there's probably more different things. But they just make it real easy for you to click that button and have it go out there.
So you just said if I sent the same article to several friends in email.
Did anybody tweet it?
But you're saying, why would I use Twitter to send that rather than an email?
Well, it depends on your following and
Depends
how
on your
often you're in
community.
there.
Yep.
Everybody to see
But
it.
you would potentially have much bigger impact if you had you would share these thoughts and these notions to a wider audience, and it could become viral more quickly too. So if you shared it and people in your network picked it up and they shared it, it expands exponentially. So these ideas become instantaneous sometimes if they're ideas that grab you.
But it's the same concept like on Facebook. You gotta have friends, and Twitter you have to have people who
follow
Right.
you follow you or follow you.
Right. Yeah.
So
So
talk-
if I
People who follow me.
It always starts.
Tell people
probably send it to the people that are following you.
So they get
So
us started.
I do actually have a Twitter account, and I have 2 posts.
Yeah.
One like 4 years ago, and another one that said, "I'm about to start tweeting again," and I've got like how embarrassing, exactly. But I've got 35 or 40 followers or something, and I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when people go garden in Twitter and they look for those people who they're interested in and who might be doing interesting things on Twitter, they'll go to their tweets and say, when's the last time they tweeted? What did they tweeted? Oh, she's tweeted twice. Well, she's not on, so I'm not going to follow.
So if I had something substantial to say on a regular basis, for instance, I might start a blog, but to get people to actually find my blog, I would want to be tweeting about my.
You got it. Yes.
my blog.
Yes. So we
So New
will
York
do.
Times finds that they're not. Nobody's going to their home. Not nobody, but a lot fewer people are going to their homepage. They're coming in sideways.
Yeah.
They're coming in through these social networks.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. Is we'll do a webcast, and so we tweet that we're doing the webcast right now with the URL, or we'll tweet that there's a new blog post.
So I'm going to do it.
Go
Ed
ahead,
did.
go ahead, Craig.
I'm going to tweet. I'm going to share this with my network. Right. So as soon as I click tweet, it's done the shortening thing that Lisa's talked about. I have 101 characters left to talk about this. So, you know.
My dad cut this out for me.
I'm not teaching.
And it made his article.
So now you're in Twitter, Dad.
Times are changing. And then I'll put his article in quotes so that it's. So I'm telling people that this is the title of the article. I'll tweet it out.
And that's going to 300.
It's going to their newsfeed, and it's not guaranteed they're going to interact with it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what my question is about. If I send email, or put it for myself, when I receive emails, I read them.
Exactly.
I at least look at them. Facebook, which is the one of these things I'm on, I might check in on it like once a week, and there's no way I read everything that shows up on Facebook.
Right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right. So you're missing things on Facebook.
You're working hard now.
Right.
But if people expect that if they post it on Facebook that I'm going to read it, then there's a disconnect there.
You would hope that.
Oh, I've got the same thing going. So there's an email, there's something to me on Facebook from this summer asking for my opinion about something. Like, you got to email me,
Yeah.
and then I have a chance to see.
It's correct to say that 18 and 20 somethings are looking at Twitter all day, every day, so they're getting
They
all
are.
this information. You and I aren't.
But do they have an email address? I mean,
They
if you
don't
wanted
email
to
young kids. They don't email.
My kids don't use email. They text me. I know it on Twitter, so they just text. When they want something from me, they text it. I respond an email. They don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't email and they don't listen to answering machines. They just look at the caller ID.
And call you back.
Who's called.
Yeah.
And then they call you and say, what did you want to talk about? Now, I left you a voice message. They have to listen to it.
Yeah, I think there's levels of intimacy with each platform, right? So, Twitter, Facebook, you're kind of just sharing it out there in the world. Hey, this is a good idea, or this is something that I'm interested in learning more about. But you go to email. Hey, friends, this is a really good article. You should read. There's a little bit more intimacy there. Then maybe you pick up the phone, and then you're really starting to.
You're asking for money.
Yeah. And you're asking money.
So talk a little bit about the ratio, the ideas behind following and followers.
Okay, so she's talking about here on Twitter. Followers are the number of people who are following what I'm tweeting, and following are the number of people who I've decided to follow if I find interesting.
Well, and just to clarify, and what as Craig said was that the ones that are we say are following, they're the ones that have clicked the follow button. There's no guarantee to know that they're actually paying any attention.
Right.
But they've at least gone through the effort of saying, "Oh yeah, Mark Brush, click
Right.
follow."
And so, with Michigan Radio, we had, when we first set this up many years ago, we had an auto follow. So if anybody followed us, we followed them. So we had 9,000 followers. Well, we followed 9,000 people. Well, suddenly people realized that on Twitter, it's really about a two-way conversation. They don't want just people broadcasting at them all the time. They want to be able to interact with you. So we unhooked that and started another channel where we're actually having conversations with people on Twitter. And so Michigan Radio follows maybe 800 people, and we have 30,000 followers. So that's kind of like if you have, say, 4,000 followers and you're following 4,000 people, people will get an indication that you're not really discerning who you're following.
That's exactly right. So there's that ratio of you don't want to be and yet you want to be following people. So if you have 300 followers and you're following 2 people, you don't want that either. I mean, so it's that kind of how do you dive into it?
Mark, it sounds like Michigan Radio set some criteria for who they would follow.
That's right. Yeah.
Was that an in-depth, lengthy, took a long time kind of conversation, or?
No,
you
it
did it
was
based
me.
on. Or did you have that kind of conversation with yourself at the right time?
And my whole purpose.
Is there a written policy that goes along with it?
There's not a written policy that goes along with who we follow. It's more we want to, myself and now Kimberly, our social media director, we want to follow. We want our news feed to be something that's worthwhile in terms of Michigan news. So if you're a politician, if you're involved with a group that's creating news, if you're another media outlet, we want to, in our feed, see what's kind of going on in the state. And so if something breaks in the state, we want to see we want to see it on our feed quickly. And so that's kind of what
But who's looking at this all day?
we check in and out of it. It's not like we're watching it constantly, but we definitely check in and out of it.
Like how many times a day?
Well, there is something called TweetDeck that's always up, and so if we see it start to tumble really quickly, we know something big's going on. So, and then we'll start reading what's going on.
On that question of who reads it, do you have any idea, like on that Senate bill that you're interested in, do you have any idea if any senators pick up on this? That there are 10,000 people out there who are objecting to this?
Oh, yes. The politicians are on Twitter. and they know what's going on. So there's this thing that's happening last night. This guy Kirby DeLauder, he's a politician in Fredericksburg, and this reporter wrote a piece about him when he wouldn't answer her phone calls about the story. Well, he threatened her on social media, on Facebook, with a lawsuit for publishing his name in the newspaper. You cannot publish my name without me allowing you to do that. Well, the newspaper published an opinion piece. The title was Kirby DeLauder, Kirby DeLauder, Kirby DeLauder. And then it had I don't know, however many letters are in his name, paragraphs in it with an acrostic with his name in it. And so it blew up overnight. And so suddenly this person who was trying to bully a reporter is now
Called out.
Yeah.
Or bullied back.
Or bullied back. But he's called out because he crossed the line.
Whichever side you're on.
Yeah. But
yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, so I think those influencers are on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is kind of an overall general question about social media. Well, the question is, do you know if there's any classes that are getting started, particularly for young people, to help them understand the do's and don'ts of social media? Because it's really, in our society, it takes at least a generation for our norms to catch up with technology.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of things going on. Betty and I just taught a class to a girls group, which was high school girls. And one of the things we were talking about is what happens when you post something on social media. They did not understand that when you threaten somebody on social media, that's assault.
Right.
And, these young people can find themselves getting in a lot of trouble, cyberbullying, all that. And they don't understand that you put something in social media, it's there. It's like that you posted a letter on a wall for somebody to look at, because you can't call it back once it's out there.
Right.
So it seems like there should be some initiative to make sure that particularly our young people understand the do's and don'ts of social media, because it can be a very dangerous thing for their life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know that so my kids go to or have gone to Ann Arbor Open, and I know that they have talked about it in school about this kind of thing, and talked about that both in terms of social media as well as texting and those kinds of things. I don't know that it's any, it's not part of the Common Core, but I think that there's a strong argument for that.
Yeah, I wonder if there are. I mean,
I think there are.
And then just given where we are with it, it's such a changing environment, but the message is still kind of the same as it's always been. It's sort of like to be nice, don't be a jerk. But it's on social media. And I was talking to my friend at the sheriff's office, and he said, all of our fights, like at schools and things like that, almost all of them sort of like either start in a social media fight or end up in a social media fight. And it, like you say, it's just there, and it's sort of like it's a threat. It's something somebody feels like they have to respond to. It's whatever it is, and it's out there. And it really, yeah, people do need to be smart about what they say.
Yeah, I understand there's a group of sheriffs that have since if you publish some of these kids are using selfies, publishing nude photographs of themselves. This happens to be child pornography.
Right.
If they're under the age of 16, and kids have been prosecuted for that.
Yeah.
The crime
Right,
of
like
that.
you say, they're stepping in
And so
stuff
now,
that they
now
just
there are
don't need to
group
be.
of people becoming aware of, we have to go around in these schools and talk to these kids that they could be prosecuted.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
You
but
mean the person posting it?
yeah, the person who said it.
Of themselves.
Of themselves.
And sharing it.
Because it's put out in general public, it's distributing child pornography.
I would say also it goes back to my other point is that it's important for us to be in those places and conversing with people to make it more simple.
Right.
And so this is an example of something that's happening on our page where this person came in and called somebody, another poster, a name. Well, it seems kind of harmless online, but we don't allow it. And so our news director comes in. This person says, "You deleted my comments. I wish you had more backbone, Michigan Radio." Well, we promised you didn't miss anything with the deleted comment. As a reminder, we delete spam, direct attacks on other commenters, hate speech, vulgar language. Our backbone is firm. So is our attempt to keep civility in this comment section of our website. And then he comes back, why can Jack say damn, but I can't say asinine? You can say asinine, but you just can't call other people asinine. So a comment can be asinine, but not a person? Got it. See, that's not so hard. So this is what I'm saying. It's important for us to... Yeah. So there's numerous examples of people like this who we have brought around. And they have become more civil online. We can see it.
Well,
there was a conservative commentator who was really angry. He would just attack us all the time. And he actually would make some fairly decent conservative, encountering Jack Lessenberg arguments. And we invited him to be a commentator.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think as long as people realize there's another human being on the other end, that's when I see the conversations begin to simmer down and be more simple.
It seems that we're always behind. We're always trying to catch up. I mean, I remember when I was in England and there was a man on the bus I was on just talking on his cell phone and annoying everyone.
Right.
And it was a long-distance bus, and I complained to the stewardess. She asked him to be quiet, and after 5 minutes he started again. And I complained again, and they threw him off the bus. But now people are texting. We don't hear this kind of thing.
Right.
So that we're always like a few steps behind in forming like you say, forming the rules of how to use these things.
Yeah.
And I was interested, I used to teach French, and in France a few years ago, they published something called Le droit à l'oubli, the right to be forgotten. And I was hearing that it's come to America now, that people ask Google to delete, I don't really understand it all, but to delete the connection.
Right.
But that's all very well if Google deletes it, but it's probably gone somewhere else by now as well, right? So
sometimes, yeah,
we're always sort of behind, and I don't know how we can prevent that in a way.
Yeah.
Well, I think with any technology, I think that's always the case. There are always the mavens who are out there early, starting stuff and doing things, and then there are those of us who are catching up with the technology, and some of us do it faster than others. You know, it's all a matter of pace and how we're doing it. And I think that as a society, that's certainly the case, and it always has been. The first person on the block who had a refrigerator, you know, there was something.
Oh, and they're all.
Yeah, it seems to me like your profession or whatever, I mean, you can be successful or not based at how much you are connected and how good you are in like surfing and knowing Twitter and this and that. It really reflects on how good you can do your job.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not just going to college and having a degree. It's really how you interact socially through social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really very, very, very successful online people who've created online communities, and it's all just as a result of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they're really making a difference. They're making an impact in people's lives also.
So what else do you have to share?
So let's see, go back to this slide. We'll go to the donut. So this is what we were talking about before, about the different languages in social media. So each platform almost has a different language. And so
That's a donut.
that's a donut. We know it as a donut. On, let's see, Twitter. This is what you would talk about that donut. I'm eating a donut. You hashtag the donut. So you want to have a conversation with other people about donuts because you're really a fan of donuts. And it's something you're doing right now. Twitter's very instantaneous. On Facebook, it says, I like this donut. Do you like it too? Tell me about it.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it. That's a great looking donut you have there. Instagram is another social media platform that's photograph based. So it's this tool that allows you to share photos, and then they have all these beautiful filters. So you take the photograph, and then Instagram has these filters, and you can make it look like an old photograph from 1964. So this is a donut from 1964. Or you can put on blue filters. It creates these really beautiful photographs, and then you can share text underneath that. So it's a visual.
So my 25-year-old bonus son Instagram a lot. He's doing a lot of stuff around race, identity, youth empowerment,
Right.
and that's what he's using.
It's Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram and Tumblr.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And another one is Reddit. So this is a place where it looks super clunky, but it's a very robust community where people share other content online that's interesting, and then they have a big discussion around it. So that's Reddit. A lot of people are looking at this donut in particular. Pinterest is here's a donut recipe. LinkedIn, my skills include donut eating. In Tumblr, let's share everything about the wonderful world of donuts. So Tumblr is really kind of, it's also very visual in the way that Instagram is, but it creates these web pages that can be viewed in desktop, mobile, very pretty, and you're able to, there's also a social engagement element to Tumblr as well. And it's like an instant blogging tool.
Well, and then if you go to one of the things that our kids are using now is Snapchat, which is sort of like Instagram. It's take a picture, it's send a picture, but it's as soon as somebody looks at it, it disappears unless they click to a screen grab of it. But it's so that kind of tackles that sexting thing where it like doesn't stay there forever, but not really because people can still grab it. But the idea of Instagram is it's just a quick take a picture, send it, you look at it, and it's gone.
Yep.
That's the Mission Impossible.
I thought this was interesting is that the University of Michigan, right? We all think of Snapchat and we think of the scandalous things that kids might do with it. But the University of Michigan realizes that its students are on Snapchat and they want to be able to be in that conversation. They don't want to just let them go and have the conversation and not learn. So they have created
that's why you're on Kick.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think my daughter, she shares, like, instead of saying I'm feeling happy, she'll Snapchat a picture of herself to her cousin Isabel, just like, just a goofy face.
Yeah.
And so that's her emoticon, kind of.
So they're here. They're on Snapchat. They're in that they know that if they want to talk to their students, they need to be there.
They better be.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
What is the point exactly of Snapchat? If the picture goes away, what are you talking about?
You're just discussing.
You're
You're talking about what you're doing now. Yeah, you're at the game. You're at the game. Share us what's going on with the game. You're at a lecture. Share what's going on there.
Well, it is. I mean, it's also just crazy. So my kids went skiing. It's just a different world. So my kids went skiing, and if I Snapchatted, I would have said. But I texted them and I said, send me a picture. Who would have dreamt of having them send a picture 10 years ago of them while they're skiing? I would talk to them about it when they came home. But now that's what we do.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the point is that if you start getting all these pictures sent to you by text message or otherwise, they're clogging up your phone. And if it's really just oh, nice, that's all. That you sort of already got the bonus of it. You don't have to keep it like on my tool bench with all the screws that I've got from all these other projects. I've got a whole jar of screws, and it's like I'm never going to use them again. And it's similar to perhaps this quick picture from your kids on the ski hill. you've already gotten all the bonuses you're going to
Cool.
get out of it. You
Yep.
might look at it again some other day and go, oh yeah, I remember that trip. But it is that just sort of that instantaneous, I'm at the ski slope.
As we're talking, I'm thinking this conversation is also going away.
Yeah,
Right.
But
But
you're
not.
recording it.
But you're recording exactly.
Oh, so you think.
So, one of the points that I wanted to make is we're talking about some different uses of it. So we're talking about some of the social ways that we connect with our kids, with people, with our friends from past, future, and then we're also talking about some of the real, the whole Arab Spring, but also the uses of it in Michigan Radio or at the county or at the Stewardship Network or other places where you really are using it as a tool. We also do hear about it in terms of the fights that end up started or finished online somewhere, or some of the trouble that people can get in. But I think one of the things that's really important about these tools is they are really powerful, and they really are making an impact in what we do. And so, it's one of the things that I struggle with in terms of what am I going to do with it. I do need to be in that space, and so I need to figure out how I'm going to integrate it. But it's not just silly things that kids are doing.
Right. It's important to at least understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
In the first election for President Obama, his edge was in large measure, because I did professional paper on this, his edge was in large measure provided by facility with social media, less so in the second election, because by then the other parties had caught up a bit, but probably had he not made a very early visit to Facebook, that's not what to Google. That's where, and they oriented him when he was just a new senator.
Yes.
And he says in his book, I got a look to the future. He didn't have to do all the technical stuff. He had to know that had to be part of his campaign.
Right. That's right. And then he had to have, that's a great point. Yeah. Yep.
So we wanted to test your, yes.
I was just going to say, we're talking about the relevance of it. I think for mediation it's relevant, especially like you all were mentioning as far as disputes go, because if you do have parties that come in, like say for a divorce case, and he's been posting things about her on Facebook, and she's been, taking pictures of him and putting on Instagram. I just wanted to say that I think it's important as mediators to know about that, because it will be relevant in some of the cases, I'm sure.
And we have people who want the bad things taken off about contractors. Part of the agreement has to be that those negative comments be taken off.
You could put them on Angie's list, which is a form of social media you're talking about, but it's out there, isn't it?
So it sounds like understanding the privacy settings or how these things are shared for you guys might be important, because you might be able to make suggestions to people about how they share it.
But, and I think it's for me, if I get it right, is like in a small claim situation, in sort of the good old days, I might shake my fist and be upset about it. But today I might post on Facebook that I've gotten really, my landlord is trying to kick me out, or being unfair, or worse. And that's, I know that even on people will complain about Comcast on Twitter. Well, Comcast is watching, and they're always looking at Comcast. And occasionally they'll use that as a way to get service calls in and say, well, let me reach out to you and say, hey, this is Comcast. What's your problem? Can I help you? And so that sort of public-ish shout out of, I'm getting poor service from this company, can sometimes result in service. And from a lurker's point of view of watching that conversation, they might say, well, Comcast actually treated them right. And that's a public relations goal for a company that actually is responsive, versus somebody saying, like you're saying, it's all of this stuff is bad without any kind of official response. And we think about that at the county, and I'm trying to get the county to think about it, because you look at Ann Arbor News online, and there's just it's the trolls primarily, and there isn't any official voice of reason saying, well, what you're really talking about is this. This is how much budget is allocated to this. This is the things that we've been doing in this area. Thank you very much. It's just I can't believe they did that again.
Right. And it's just sitting there.
Right. Yeah. We really take it seriously. If somebody posts something that we know is factually incorrect, we'll say that's factually incorrect. So hopefully we put a stop to that misunderstanding being promoted more. So the county can do the same thing. So we wanted to test this is the language section of the online world and how people communicate in texts or in Twitter, things like that. So test your social media lingo. See if you know what that means.
Laugh out loud.
Right.
Lots of love.
Not lots of love.
What is
I love that story.
Laugh out loud.
Laugh out loud.
Tell the story.
The moth story? Yeah. There was a father who followed his kids on texts and Twitter and Facebook, and he couldn't communicate with his son, but he found that his son was always on social media. So he decided to be on social media. And his son came home from school, went upstairs and shut his door. He suddenly got a text from his son that said, "Dad, I love your shirt," because it was kind of loud and funny. LOL or something like that. Father thought, "Oh, that's so sweet." He said, "Lots of love."
He loves my shirt.
He loves my shirt. So anyways, he decides this is great. I'm going to start using these tools. So he's sending emails he finds out that this means lots of love, and when somebody loses a pet, he sends them a message. He says, "I am so sorry. We lost Rover. LOL."
Oh, wow.
And so he continues doing this for, I think, months, and then suddenly he does this, "I'm so sorry you lost your aunt," and he sees his son in it, LOL, and his son opens the door, runs downstairs, and says, "What are you doing, Dad?" It's like, "Don't you know what LOL means?" And then his son.
That's why you gotta learn the language.
You gotta learn the language.
Yeah. Hugs and kisses.
That's a sweet one, right? Yeah.
In my humble opinion, yeah.
In my humble opinion. Yep. So there's a lot of language that can be lost if you're not face to face with somebody. So there's different ways that social media makes up for that. This is for the Reddit people out. There's no Reddit people here, but on Reddit, President Obama will go on Reddit and he'll engage in these things that are called Ask Me Anything. So he's there. You can ask him anything. They're called AMAs. So ask me anything.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Yep.
Talk to you later. Yep.
Same thing. Ta-ta for now, right?
What is that?
Ta-ta for now.
Ta-ta for now. This is one you really should know. It's important that you know this. If somebody sends you something and it has this attached to the subject line, don't open it at work. It's not safe for work. Not safe for work. Open it at home. This is something that people tweet out a lot in case you missed it. So it might be a news item or something that was somebody shared last year. But in case you missed it.
This stuff is usually for Twitter because they only have 140 characters.
Limited by characters.
Twitter and text.
Yeah. Yep, text. This is another thing we'll see a lot.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. So this is somebody who shares an article and they want to, and the article's really long, so they want to summarize it for you. Too long, don't read. Here's what it's about.
I thought it was too long, didn't read, which is like somebody sends you an email and you're like, TLDR. Can you send me a shorter one? I'm not going to wade through all that crap.
TLDR. Yep. Yeah.
What's that?
Shaking my head.
Okay.
So, something you're just disappointed in. You see that a lot on Facebook, I think. And these are the different Twitter kind of things that you can do. So a DM is a direct message on Twitter, so it's basically like an email you send on Twitter. You send it directly to your other follower, and nobody else sees it. So you just write DM in front of the message, and the person, and it goes directly to them. Nobody else sees it on Twitter. RT means a retweet, so that's the Thomas Friedman article that we thought was interesting. I'm going to retweet it. Mentions are how you communicate with people. So it's you put a little @ sign, and somebody wants to talk to me directly, but in public, they'll put an @ sign and my name on it, and then we'll have a conversation.
A public conversation.
Yeah, a public conversation. Yep. MT is modified tweet, so if you change the tweet a little bit, you still retweet it, you modify the tweet. Promoted tweets is how Twitter makes its money, so you'll see sometimes ads come through your tweets. Lists are a great thing. Lists are, if I want to gather up all the environmental professionals that are on Twitter who are communicating on Twitter, I can make a list of them, and the people can follow that list. So I can put Lisa and all the other professionals who aren't tweeting or tweeting on the list. And now I've created a list of environmental leaders in Michigan. Here's what they're saying. I made a list 2 years ago of when the shutdown was happening, of what Michigan congressional delegation wanted to know what they thought of the shutdown. So I made a list of all the Michigan Congress people. And so people could follow that list to see what their representatives were saying on Twitter.
At which point, if somebody's not saying anything and somebody's looking at that list, you're like, hey, what's wrong with this person?
Why aren't they saying that? Yeah. And hashtags we talked about before, it's a grouping. Does this play audio? Yeah. Because there's one of the biggest people on Twitter is Jimmy Fallon. I don't know if you can hear it. Turn.
Jimmy.
If it doesn't work, it's okay.
It doesn't work.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay. Well, anyways, he gives examples of.
We
We can read it. So he loves, one of his comedy sketches is in reply to. So he posts how people converse back and forth on Twitter, and so it's a good kind of illustration of how people talk to one another. So this is an answer, and so this is somebody who this is CNN responding to this person, Stu Rasher EMA, 8 in the morning at 10 at night. So that's the answer. So now the question is, what did Stu Rasher ask CNN? And the answer, see if it comes. You have to wait for it. How many people watch CNN? So this is an example of how a conversation might occur on Twitter. At Lisa Brush, what do you think of the bill? And Lisa would come back in, well, at Mark, I think this. And you're having a public conversation about it. And so that's how it's done. If the only people who can see this are people who are both following CNN and Stu Rasher.
Both interesting.
Yeah. So if you want it to be public, you would put another character in front of this, like a period there, and then suddenly everybody can see it. So if you start off with an @ sign, you're only keeping it with those within those two networks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's Twitter. Oh, this is somebody was asking about what's coming next. So this is a way that people online convey. Another way they convey emotions is through these things called animated GIFs. So if you think of Chinese characters and how they not only represent words, they represent a feeling. So you can look at that one character and get a notion of it's a mountain, it's serenity. This is our answer to that. It's these GIFs, and he's really, you can kind of tell how he's feeling about something. So we felt this way about Kirby DeLauder. Right?
And you would either make that or find it and send it to somebody.
Yeah. And so I texted one of our volunteers who's with her mom in the hospital this morning. She's having heart surgery. And so what she sent back to me was this picture of these two hands in prayer.
Yeah.
She didn't say anything else, but I knew exactly that whole concept of what she meant.
Right. Exactly. So and this is how if Governor Snyder signs the bill, you might send this.
Right.
Skip. And then the new thing is emojis. So not just texting words. Kids are sending little pictures. I don't know what's
Oh, that's what I was actually talking about emoji.
Oh, were you,
I was talking about emoji.
Smiley face. That's not a smiley face.
It's
way beyond.
Way
Way
beyond.
beyond smiley face. So they'll write sentences with pictures. And so it's a new app, it's a new way people are communicating. So these are famous first lines of novels in emoji. And we'll see if you can figure out what they are.
Oh, these right now are?
Yeah. So the top one, what novel did that come from? Famous novel. He was an old man who fished alone in a skiff in the Gulf Stream, and he had gone 84 days without taking a fish.
Anyways.
The best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah, that's right.
Best of times and the worst of times.
And then the last one?
Last one, as Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect. Kafka, the Metamorphosis. Stretch. So that's kind of what one way people are
The future.
Or not. You never know. So, yeah. But anyways, and then we've gathered up some resources too.
So just one other thing just that we don't talk about, because all of these social media things are, this is sort of like the business side of it is, Facebook is worth billions. You know, all these companies are like money makers, and what they're really trafficking in is all of the stuff that we're willing to share about each other means that they know much more about us. And so when they drop an advertisement in front of me, it's pretty related to all the things that I've been talking about. And so they're back in the in the early days in advertising on TV is like what's the demographic of people that watch The Young and the Restless, and that's they say, well, based on what I understand of that, this is where it is. Well, with this, it's how old are you, where do you live, what other things are you interested in, all this kind of stuff, so that I can say I want my advertising dollars to go right at not just even that demographic, but you. And so I think that's the main business driver of a lot of this stuff is, and it's out there. I mean, that's we talk about the NSA of sort of grabbing all of it, but Facebook has it all. If somebody actually, for the most part, they're doing it all in aggregate and just saying, oh yeah, people in Ann Arbor between the ages of this and that, I want to advertise to that demographic. But if somebody with their fingers in this and took the time, they would know a whole lot more about you.
This is all done by computers, right?
Yeah.
It's gathering the information, they make it into an algorithm.
Right.
All these facts, and it comes out you.
Yeah, and then on the other side of it, the privacy thing, there's this other video that Mark and I were looking at last night, was this guy who threw a lot, many people use their phones, their smartphones for sending pictures and tweets and things like that, is that a lot of it is, if you don't turn it off, they're geotagged, so it knows where you took the picture, which is pretty cool. It's like, this is where it is. Well, this guy went on Twitter and a bunch of other social media things and found through mapping, a mapping version of that, who's tweeting near where I am, and then looked at them, and most of us then associated with our account have a picture of our faces. And so he'd walk up and he'd say, hey, Tony, how you doing? How's that sandwich? And the people are like, ooh, like, how do you know all this stuff? And he basically was just, he'd spend 5 minutes, look it up, figure out, Tony, he tweeted that he's at this restaurant, so I'm going there, but then I'm also going back into your previous tweets and what I can find out on Facebook and everything else, and just laying out for you bits of your life that this stranger is like saying.
Yeah, I like that.
It's sort of like,
the wake up.
And it's really kind of funny because people should just sort of know,
but they don't.
But they're just shocked. It's like, so you're saying is that people actually don't know what they're putting out there, and they don't know how public it actually is, and what kind of other things that they get into. And there is, other sort of cybersecurity sides of this, which is, so much of our life is locked up into online banking and things like that. And well, the easiest way to reset a password is to go and say, I want to reset my password. If you get a hold of somebody's email account, it comes back and it says, answer a few questions. Well, if you spend any time with somebody's social media presence, you can figure out what those questions, the answers are. What's your dog's name?
So if they're not aware, I mean, that being said, you can go in and fix that. You can go in and change your privacy settings so that it is not public to everyone. You can understand how Twitter works and just share it with just the people you want to share it with. But you have to understand how it works.
Yeah.
So it's not like everything you post on Facebook is always going to be out there. There are ways to share within a small group. But you have to understand how to.
Well, I was going to wrap up.
Yeah.
I was going to say thanks a lot. It's great to explore this and kind of think about the different ways to use it and understand it. And I think there probably could be further dialogue around kind of its specific uses now that you kind of we've got some common language. I mean, that's the hard part when you're first starting to talk about something is the language just isn't even there to have the conversation. And so, thinking through some of those things, I think, would be really helpful to the work that you all do. And thank you for the work that you do. Really, really appreciate your role as mediators. Yes.
So, thank you very much. I was thinking that these three wonderful human beings all do presentations all over the country, but I don't think they've ever done one together, all three of them. So this is a first.
Is there anything we didn't answer that you want to know? So many, I know. Tweet us.
You can like the DRC.
We like the DRC. This has been a really cool thing for us. This discovering Facebook groups has been really amazing.
Yeah.
It's a closed group, and you can suddenly interact with people all over the country and share ideas. You're having a problem, post it up there, somebody can help you fix it. So I have a VW bus that I work on, and
It's the nature of having a VW bus.
yeah, you have to
need
always
say
work
that.
on it. Yes, but I'm on this. It's an email list. It's the same thing. Like I'm having problems fixing this on it. I send an email. Suddenly, there's a nationwide community of Vanagon owners that can help me fix it.
So, first Wednesday in February, we're going to be talking about gay lesbian issues in mediation. So, see you all then.
Great.
Okay.